Ahoy, and welcome aboard, ye scurvy dogs, to the Black Magic Treehouse, the podcast where we discuss the children's horror literature that should have been rated R. My name, of course, is Peg Leg Eric, and with me is me cabin boy, Jose. But not in an inappropriate way. How are
Hmm.
you doing today, Jose?
I
The
don't
cabin
know.
boy.
I find it. I don't know if I should be offended that my name stayed the exact same, even though we're in this piratey milieu now. It's like, well, I'm just Jose no matter where I go because I don't know. Anyhow, I'm doing all right. A little seasick, but I am ready to be driven to death by
Driven to death.
yes, by this episode.
Yeah, well, when we first, over a year ago, or maybe just about a year ago, started recording episodes for this podcast, um, I had in my head this idea that we were going to focus pretty much exclusively on like post Goosebumps spooky chapter books of like the mid to late 90s. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess we've done that a little bit, like Fright Time. Both of those episodes are, but those are sort of anthologies, and they feel like their own thing because of the artwork feeling so, like you noted at the time, like 70s, EC Comics updates or like creepy and eerie magazine and stuff like that. So I really wanted to get back to the heart of what I considered to be the interesting thing about this show and talk about some of the books that maybe I don't explicitly remember or didn't read, but they seem of a piece with what I would have remembered or read. And so today we tackled one of the series that is in that sort of milieu, which incidentally I had not heard of until I started researching for this podcast what were those 90s horror chapter book series. And it's one called Strange Matter by Engel and Barnes, which has, for a series I never heard of, it has a surprising number of entries. It has like 37 entries. Were you at all familiar with Strange Matter prior to today's read?
I don't believe I ever was. Did you do any kind of digging into the series as a whole or the authors? Like, for one thing, I'm confused as to what the authorial partnership is between Engel and Barnes because some things you see it lists both of them, other things you see it just lists Engel. And the other thing I was going to say is for some reason this thing is registering as being British to me, but I have absolutely nothing to back that up.
Interesting. I did not get the British vibe at all. I thought they captured the quintessence of the American preteen in the Clinton years. No, I did not do any research on the authors, except to look up on Open Library because I have a physical copy of this book, but I wanted to make sure that you could access it to read it. And it is, I don't
Thanks.
know, I didn't check the actual covers to see. When you're saying some of them are listed as one or the other, do you mean like within this series or?
Yeah, I mean, at least hey, I mean, it's late. I fell asleep in my daughter's room earlier, so I'm kind of like half delirious right now. But I feel like even on Open Library, Driven to Death, I feel like the page listing has it as being Engel and Barnes, or I know for a fact I just looked on Goodreads that other entries list both of their names on the cover, but I feel like the title page of Driven to Death, which is what the Open Library document opens with, it's just lists Engel's name. So I was kind of confused.
Yeah, you're right. I'm looking at it right now. A montage publication, a frontline company, San Diego, California. Marty M. Engel. Yeah, I did notice when I was looking at Open Library that they had been cataloged. Some of them were cataloged through Engel and Barnes. Some of them were cataloged through the author name of one or the other. And some of them I just had to look up like title by title because it wouldn't even say. So I just thought that was a fluke within their cataloging and not necessarily, but maybe they actually were checking that typeface. It's funny because I didn't notice that. I thought that like reading the book in the stylistic way that the book is written, I was like, there were times when I was like, it does kind of feel like the book is just going back and forth between two people because sometimes the writing style gets a little more um, extreme. There's a lot of all caps sentences and things to indicate that somebody is shouting, and just various things that feel like sometimes it feels like a regular book and sometimes it feels like a histrionic, you know, um, well, you use the word delirious already, just like run on sentences and stuff that we kind of talked about in Fright Time is like, which makes it feel
Hmm.
legitimately like it could have been written by a preteen, but driven to death.
Right, driven to death. So, um, you mentioned before that the purview that you imagined the show was going to have was kind of centering on what would be, for lack of a more generous term, Goosebumps knockoffs. And I have to say, with this particular case, this particular series, it's really funny just looking at as an artifact. The outside cover, it leaves something to be desired. It's got kind of like that warped anamorphy thing going on with some of the covers where it almost looks like it could be a blending of science fiction as well as horror at times. But the inner contents, I had to laugh because it has these goopy chapter headings that look almost identical to the ones from Goosebumps, and even the typeface and the font size is pretty much the exact same. I it's kind of dumb and dorky, but it, it pleased me greatly to see how much they were wanting to mimic the literal look and in some cases, in some instances, the tone of the Goosebumps books.
Yeah, and based on the cover and the font of the title, which is strange, has like a lightning bolt running through it, and then matter has like, I guess like green slime that's kind of bubbling out of the R in matter at the end, and then the cover of this one is a young boy being run down by a big truck. Um, is there a better word than just truck? Truck can mean a lot of things, but I mean like the big rig type truck. Uh,
Semi.
a semi, yeah, and but it's done in this like almost monochromatic palette where it's all like dark purples and dark magentas, dark magenta, and and you
Yeah,
said it's has kind of a sci-fi feel, and so I was wondering like another 90s cultural artifact, were they trying to kind of sell this to an audience as like X-Files Junior or something? Because it doesn't evoke horror really. Looking at it
mm-hmm.
does feel more like sci-fi or like the intersection of sci-fi and horror, which was really not anything that Goosebumps did too often, at least.
Right. Yeah, it was definitely more, blood chilling in its approach. Yeah, and just the name of the series itself, Strange Matter, it almost it just reoccurred to me now. I had forgotten that I did this in my brain, but at some point before, when I think you told me that we were going to focus on this series, just that kind of science fiction-y feel that I got from it, along with the name, made me say the name of the series to the tune of like the Weird Science song, Strange Matter. I got that, kind of bubbling chemistry set vibe from it. And yeah, Strange Matter, just that conjures images and feelings of like the Twilight Zone, kind of like you're saying, that intersection of the supernatural and science fiction and fantasy and horror, just that whole bubbling stew.
Yeah. I was looking for this on Open Library because my copy has a big old annoying price sticker over the teaser on the back, which I wanted to read. but I
Boo.
can get through. I can get through most of it except for like the very last sentence. You already named the title. This one is Driven to Death, Strange Matter number 3. Buckle up for the ride of your life. Or you could read that in a scarier matter, I guess, manner. Darren Donaldson is staring out his bedroom window at 2 o'clock in the morning, panicked, looking down the street for any sign of his brother. His older brother, David, snuck out of the house at midnight, taking the car, as usual, making Darren promise he wouldn't tell. Italics. He's been gone for 3 hours, the longest he's ever been gone. Something must have happened. Something dreadful. Wait. There's David now. The car is coming down the street. He's killed the engine, coasting toward the driveway. He's scrambling out of the car, pushing it from behind. He looks frantic, terrified. What's going on? He's signaling for help, looking over his shoulder, as if headlights snap on. And then this is the part I can't read because there's a big orange ARC thrift store sticker over it. Something, something, something. Engine roars to life. David is screaming. Something is chasing him, and it isn't stopping. Warning, brave readers only. That's their little reader beware, you're in for a scare tag at the end there.
Wow. So first of all, shots fired at the Ark thrift bookstore for replacing their stickers so so shamefully over the
Thrift
blurb
stores. I
on.
don't know if it's going to make me low class to know so much about thrift store stickers, but they always have the most annoying gunk residue leaving behind stickers, and they'll put it in the most conspicuous place. So, like, I bought furniture from them before when I move or whatever, like a little end table or something, and there's just like a gunky residue sticky part on top of my table, like the entire time that I'll have a piece of furniture because it just won't come off.
Strange matter.
Yeah.
Oh boy. So
Thrift store thrills.
yeah, and chills. Oh boy, and there's of course I was going to mention this earlier, and maybe we can still do it just looking at some of the other titles in this series, but it touting, well, not touting itself, not implicitly anyway, but pretty explicitly touting itself as a Goosebumps knockoff. I would be surprised and a little ashamed if this series did not have an entry with the good old reliable play on Little Shop of Horrors. So if it was Little Thrift Shop of Horrors, even better, in keeping with the Strange Matter theme.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, that was something I always responded to when I was a kid in these types of books was not necessarily thrift stores, but just going into a store. Um, I mean, I guess in Monster Blood it was a toy store, but some kind of like old, abandoned looking store and finding a strange item, and then an adventure unfolds. Uh, So speaking of the cover, so this book opens up with the family going to their local video store. And I spent about 100 pages of this book thinking that the justification for this big rig, tanker truck or whatever it is on the cover was just because they reference Duel, like the main
Yeah.
character Darren really wants to get, or no, I think his older brother wants to get Duel. And then
Mm-hmm.
Darren is like, we've seen that already. Let's get something new. Or maybe it's reversed. I don't remember. But then he talks about like
No,
the
you
really
got it.
scary, like, yeah, Duel is, he talks about that Duel is like about a guy being chased through the desert by a truck. And the scary thing is you never see the driver, et cetera, et cetera. And for a pretty big portion of this book, there is no big truck. So I was like, is that like the sequence where they added a dream to what was the Goosebumps? Oh, it was Say Cheese and Die, where the publisher was like, we need to justify
Oh,
having this cover by Tim Jacobus where there's a family of skeletons barbecuing. So R.L. Stine was like, I'll do something really clever. All right, in a dream sequence. So I was like, did they put in
brilliant.
the reference to Duel because the cover was already done? So they were just like, movie reference. Anyway, moving on with the story.
Yeah, exactly. Um, One thing I will say, especially during that portion of the story, that I was pretty surprised. I can't remember Goosebumps ever being so straightforward in the same sense, but the franchise name dropping, yeah, we have several references to the McDonald's. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you could do that, which seems silly now, but it was just it seemed uncommon. At least my memory says it was uncommon in Goosebumps books. It would usually be some kind of like fictional variant. I'm surprised that they didn't just call the video store Blockbuster because I think at some point they make reference to, oh, the blue covers on all of the videotapes. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that took me a little bit by surprise. And there was something else that they were referencing that I guess maybe it was the movie. I'm like, oh wow, they're just coming right out and saying this actual movie that exists. Good for them, I guess. I was just kind of,
Good for
oh,
them. Good for you, Marty and Engel. Maybe that's why Barnes didn't want any part of this particular manuscript.
yeah,
He was
just
like, "You're just gonna call it McDonald's, you capitalist pig."
you're playing with fire right into the pocket of Big Ronald.
I did like that though because it feels very like I I have kind of a split personality where I'm like I don't like giant corporations, but I also love, old commercials and stuff like that. So the verisimilitude of like because in this book it's like it's a small town. I don't remember if they say where it is. They
Well,
say it's like
they
8 hours
they
to the nearest beach. So
yeah, so they do, and I just caught this via Goodreads, I think it was. So, you know, take it how you will. But I mean, it seems like an accurate enough statement. I have no reason not to believe it. But apparently, the Strange Matter series is all based in this town of Fairfield. And it says each book is
oh,
about a
okay.
different student from like Fairfield Middle School or junior high, whatever it is. So it's,
Oh, that's exciting.
yeah, we almost get like a Fear Street thing going on. I had no idea that was a thing with this series at all. So it's just like, oh, okay, neat bonus.
Yeah, there's certainly no indication of that in this book in particular. Like I don't remember them running into any other like conspicuously name dropped high school students who have no role in the plot, but they're just like,
Yeah.
oh look, it's those, kids from the volleyball team, Terry and Mike or whatever. And then they just like walk off screen. Um, but that would be really cool. That's what I remember. That's what I really wanted with Creepshow was I wanted them all to take place in oh shoot, what was the name of that town in not did I say Creepshow? Creep Over. You're
Oh,
invited
Creep
to a
Over. Yeah,
creepover.
yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, I forgot the
Uh
name of that town. But yeah, I know what you
something
mean.
yeah. So this is
Autumn
not
Autumn Bluff. Something like
Bluffington.
yeah,
Um
there you go.
yeah, this is not that small of a town, but it did feel very I don't just like that kind of again that very corporate idea of like the cool place to go in town is just the
Yeah.
local McDonald's franchise and everybody hangs out in the parking lot all night long and that's usually where David the older brother goes when he's sneaking out the car uh anyway, so I thought that was
Yeah.
cool. It reminded me very much of where I grew up. um
Hmm.
Not that I was popular enough to be hanging out in parking lots with people or anything, but that does feel very like just the thing, the era of going to the mall to hang out or going to just running like walk into the local Target or Walmart to pick something up, and that
Hmm.
becomes like the event that you do with your friends. That was very evocative to me, so I like that part of it.
Yeah, one thing that was reminiscent of one of the Fright Time stories, well, that we read, that I read, Scary Harry, the brother dynamic was kind of similar there, where you have the older brother who, to our eyes is clearly going through puberty. He talks about how grumpy he is and moody. He only comes out to eat. And then he doesn't make a model. He doesn't build models with his younger brother Darren anymore. He's too cool for that. They're like always fighting and punching each other. Just on this side of kidding, but pretty close to like actually wailing on each other. And then again, going back to the Goosebumps well, I feel like brothers weren't something that we saw all that often in Goosebumps. It was if there was a boy, like a main our main character or protagonist was a boy, he usually either had a group of friends or he was an only child, or and or he was an only child. And anytime it was siblings, it was almost always siblings of the opposite sex. Like, oh, a bratty younger brother or a bratty younger sister.
Hmm.
And I don't know why this is like notable to me. It just seems interesting that um, the particular brotherly dynamic, especially in this context of, one being older and going through some changes than the other, was something that was never really tackled. And I guess you could say the same for girls, just who were getting older and going through the changes. That wasn't something that R.L. Stein's series ever really broached.
I think that's true. Yeah. Um, the only one that I remember where there was a male protagonist with an older brother was "You Can't Scare Me," and that was kind of more of a. I don't remember him having a large role in the book or anything, but I think that was just kind of a plot device because he was the guy who like did special effects makeup, so that was where the plan came from to scare what's her name, the one who declared "You can't
Um,
scare me."
yeah,
But yeah, but apart from that, yeah, I can't think of any siblings that weren't antagonistic, annoying younger siblings. I would have maybe preferred a few more, semi pleasant. But this book is very much about the brotherly love relationship of, we used to be close and then he grew up and now he's surly and he gets called the Grump King by both the dad and the younger brother. Um, and I thought that was a good detail because yeah, later in the book, I mean, like the inciting incident starts with him, the older brother David, sneaking out the car, and I both liked and was confused by the detail that when he sneaks the car out, like he has to push it out because he doesn't want to start the engine in the garage because then he thinks that'll wake up his parents. So he has to like push it down the driveway and then like three houses down, and then he gets in and starts it. I was like, that's a nice detail, but also I feel like the garage door opening and closing would be way louder than just the engine starting in the garage. Certainly in my house, it would have been like,
yeah,
but then, yeah. Oh, and I should say the setup for the sort of mid plot twist is that Darren, right? I don't know why it's Darren and what is it?
yeah.
Darren and
Dave,
David
yeah,
Donaldson.
it's terrible.
That's annoying. They're not even twins. You can't do that.
And yeah,
Um,
stop it.
But Darren, the younger brother, likes building ships and bottles, which is presented like the lament is like, oh, David used to like doing that with me before he got too old and mature for all that stuff.
Something like 5 topics ago that I missed out on commenting was I guess just reading those Goosebumps back cover blurbs, plot summaries, whatever you want to call them, just ingrained in my mind that there's a certain way that those are supposed to read. And I just wanted to comment, like I said, 5 topics later, that I did not care for the like stream of conscious feel of the blurb you read earlier, where it's like, wait, no, it's someone else coming down the street. Like, stop, no, just it's basically like what do you call it? Like those cold opens from like a TV show, like when you see a scene that happens later in the episode proper, but they use it as like the intro of the episode. It's like, oh no, stop it, just tell me what happens in the story, and leave me hanging at the end. Don't rehash something that I'm gonna read later on. Well, I guess I don't know. Just me being cranky and weird. The usual.
Yeah, I hope you're listening to this, Engel and Barnes. In the back, it says they are the creators, writers, designers, and illustrators of the Strange Matter series. So my
Whoa.
takeaway from that is maybe they also wrote this stream of consciousness teaser on the back too.
Well, to hell with that.
Yeah, I hope you guys have learned your lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so the Darren, I don't remember David. I don't remember what David is upset about, but he sneaks the car out for whatever reason and he's upset. And then, like the teaser says on the back, Darren, Darren the younger is looking out his
Yeah.
window all night, Because he's like usually he's gone for like an hour tops. Either just drives around to blow off steam or goes and hangs out with other people at the McDonald's, and then they all filter out at like midnight or whatever, and he comes back home. Um, but so he's looking out the window, and his brother's gone, and then he comes back down the street, and he's clearly scared, and then that's when so Darren goes out to help him push the car back in the garage, and then that's when another car, a really junky old car, comes down the street, and we realize that that's who David is running from. I don't remember the exact sequence of events, but it comes out that David hit somebody else's car, and then they were chasing him or something. So now he's come back home. He doesn't know how to lose a tail, I guess, because he immediately just comes right back to his home. And
They'll never find me here.
yeah, I'll lead him back to where my family lives. So initially, they're just worried because I actually marked this page out because I wanted to read a couple paragraphs here, just I think to give people an idea of how this book is written. This is where they're bringing back in the car and they're looking at it in the garage. There was like a whole sequence that I didn't understand what was going on, where there was like metal scraping against metal because of the garage door hitting the car or something, but it didn't make any geographical sense to me at all. Uh, so I think this is after they've gotten the car into the garage and they've closed the door. Oh no. Oh no. David knelt beside the car, his finger tracing an enormous gash in the passenger door, about a foot long and 3 miles deep. Even in the dim light, I could see the jagged, raw edges. If a car could bleed, this one would have needed 180 stitches. It might as well have had a blowtorch taken to it. I felt my jaw quivering uncontrollably. Tears welled up in my eyes. A gurgle escaped my throat. Oh no. David, jumping to his feet, smacked his head with his palm. We are so dead, he croaked. Where do you get that "we" stuff, partner? I stammered. My life over in the 8th grade. I wouldn't see daylight until I was 30. The rack, the Iron Maiden, the plank, the guillotine, mere child's play compared to what surely awaited us. It must have scraped the side of the garage door on the way in. What are we going to do? We can't hide this. Dad is going to see this and hemorrhage. Hemorrhage, yeah. David grew panicky now. I, as usual, hatched a perfect plan. So logical, so brilliant. Let's run away, I said, envisioning a lifetime on the road. Week-old hot dogs, rock soup, and friends named Bubba or Red Eye. That's the end of the part I wanted to read because I thought that was pretty fun.
That was fun. Uh, so I will say this, that little passage about the tortures that would await him, I can't quote it word for word, but I'm almost positive that there is a passage just like that in the narration to A Christmas Story, which I feel like I mention every 2 episodes for some reason. But I heard that and I'm like, wait a minute, that sounds like Gene Shepherd. So there's that. And echoing a comment you made, I really liked this scene conceptually. The idea of this like thrilling. I love moments like this in stories or drama where somebody or something is coming and we have to get away or we have to hide, but things keep going wrong. Somebody's falling behind. We're losing, a precious item, and we're scrambling to get it back, scrambling to get our crap together. And, the threat is looming ever closer. I love moments like that. And so conceptually, that whole scene of Darren the Younger trying to help David the Elder, which is how they will be known henceforth, trying to push the car back into the garage before this terrifying automobile can run them down, essentially. I love all of that. But like you said, the blocking is just all over the place. So you don't have that sense of mounting tension at all. You're just kind of trying to parse out, okay, who's where, they're doing what. Wait, now it's scraping the garage door. Like the question I kept asking myself through all of this is like, isn't the other car like right on top of them at this point? Because they're taking a long time to get in. And last time I checked, a moving car goes a little bit faster than struggling children trying to push an automobile into their garage. So yeah, it was just a little bit wonky. But conceptually, it's like, well, B for effort and D for execution.
Yeah, that kind of sums up the book, honestly, which I enjoyed. I mean, I said that every time we do an episode, I'm like, I feel really bad because I do this podcast about how much we love these books and then I just crap on them the whole time. This one, I would say I generally enjoyed, although there is that midpoint plot twist that I still am not entirely sure how I feel about. And I don't even know if you got to it because you told me before we started recording that you had only made it halfway through the book. So I was like, did he cut off just before or just after that, I guess, reveal?
I think it was just after because so I don't want to get too far ahead and I know we're not doing like a plot by plot summary or a point by point summary here. But maybe just if you want to talk a little bit about what the threat is as it's initially revealed in the story before we maybe discuss the turnaround halfway through.
Yeah, I don't want to do a beat by beat either because there is a lot of
Right.
repetitive action in here and a lot of
Yeah.
like kind of I guess I wouldn't say false obstacles, but like things that are just kind of put in there to be like, okay, now we need to have a little tense moment here to
Hmm.
make this feel like a scary book or whatever that doesn't actually really add up to anything. But yeah, so the car shows up. I think it again. I as I was reading this, I was like, I should be taking notes because I'm always so bad at remembering the details. But I think the car just like comes right through the house or the garage
Yes.
door or something because it's like a ghost car. And then there's three teenagers inside whose names are revealed to be Silas, Jacob with two C's, and Squeeb, which definitely had me picturing them as like extras in Smells Like Teen Spirit music video or something. Just like these total burnout roadhead, idiots.
Yes. And Silas, by the way, is spelled with a U instead of an A. I feel like
Yeah.
that's worth mentioning.
Yeah,
Silas.
it is. So they show up and then there's just kind of this whole thing where they're like trying to get their dad to wake up because this ghost car just came in and these teenagers are telling them like David hit our car, so now we get to take your car and also we're kidnapping you or something. And so I don't remember all the details, but I think they force David or Darren or both to like sign some kind of contract basically saying like, sorry we hit your car, you can have ours. And then their
Hmm.
old junky ghost car transforms into their brand new, is it a Celica? I already feel
Yeah.
there's a shiny new, yeah. So they're like, oh no, dad's gonna kill us. And then I think dad finally wakes up and comes downstairs, like right as Darren and David are getting forced into the ghost car, and then it drives off through the wall, leaving dad, like I saw him pass out in the rearview
Yeah.
mirror as we sped off or something like that.
I love that moment so much because it's like, yeah, like Darren the younger at some point comments like, doesn't doesn't mom or dad hear any of this commotion downstairs? Because yeah, there's like an idling ghost car in the middle of their freaking living room, spewing blue mist. So he says at like two different points, oh, the trio, the ghostly trio, they must have done something to, cast like a sleeping spell over my parents. But then their dad ends up waking up and he clambers down the stairs just as like they're being shanghaied, as Darren is so helpful to point out because he's done a lot of research into pirate lore, being a model shipbuilder and all. Dad clambers down the steps just as the ghost car tears right out of the living room, and Dad is just like left dazed in a cloud of blue spectral mist. Like I just imagine him like falling back into a lazy boy, like, huh?
Yeah,
as the car tears right out of the house.
definitely wearing one of those hats with
Yeah,
like a Ebenezer Scrooge hat,
yes.
and like a dorky robe or something.
Yeah, nightcap. Carrying a candle. Whoa! Jiminy Cricket.
But speaking of pirate lore, one of the things I like the way that Darren was written because one of my big complaints about the Goosebumps books was that even though I was younger than the protagonists, when I was reading Goosebumps, I always felt like I am both braver and smarter than all of these stupid 12-year-olds.
Intellectually older.
Yeah. But in this book, as they're driving away, Darren is like thinking to himself about all of the pirate stuff that he researched. And he's talking about how like pirates would invade a town and like burn everything down. And, they would Shanghai people, but they would also just like pillage and like abduct people. And there's like a cute little, as cute as a passage about the threat of slavery can be. I guess he's talking about how like they would just like pirates would just like sneak into um, somebody's house and just like steal the kids out of their bed, even if the children were sitting there quietly reading a book. And that's a cute little like it's almost like Alvin Schwartz level like, and then the pirate was right behind you
Yeah,
or something.
exactly.
But Derek is talking about how like yeah, there were a lot of people who would, some people would, given the option, they find themselves on ships and they're like they would just jump into the water even though they knew it was like futile to swim back to land, like they wouldn't be able to make it on time, but they would rather do that than be slaves on this pirate ship. And so then Darren thinks to himself like, yeah, I think I would rather just go ahead and risk death than be driven wherever, never go to the second location as we know now. So he opens the door and just jumps out of the car while it's moving. I thought that was a pretty good moment. How did you feel about it, Jose?
I actually forgot about that moment, but yeah, it happens when they're like doing donuts at the McDonald's.
All
I
right.
think,
I guess that
yeah,
does undermine the thrill of it a little bit. Is
well,
the
yeah,
I forgot that that
it's
was the setting.
I'm coming, Happy Meal. Um, yeah, I was kind of surprised by that. That it was an act of bravery that also entailed possible death or mutilation. Just to be, yeah, so frank. Um, I think is what you're driving at, haha. Um, about what chances he stands at this current moment. Is he going to be shanghaied by these ghosts, or should he just kind of beat him to the punch and jump right out? So yeah, I had a similar reaction.
And then McDonald's, that okay, so that brings up like three different thoughts I want to get to. First of all, speaking of frankness, when the teenagers show up in the house, they keep saying like we're gonna kill you, which again I've talked before about how that feels really punchy in the '90s book because that was the era of like standards and practices where cartoon villains, they could be like shooting a laser or something, but they'd always have to say like I will destroy you. Like they couldn't actually use the word kill.
Yeah,
So like the fact that these teenagers kept being like, do what we say, or we're gonna kill you. We might just kill you anyway. It was like, wow, that seems mature for a book this age level. Um, oh, the other thing was the McDonald's thing. I also thought that was funny. There's a lot of I thought this book was pretty funny actually. The way it was written, there was a lot of funny moments. And
yes,
one of those was like after Darren jumps out, and then the teenagers just like grab him and pull him back in through the window. And then the manager of the McDonald's is like leaning out the window, shaking his fist, like, you darn kids, get out of here. And like screaming at them through the drive through speaker. And what was the last thing? Oh, something. Oh, I was just going to say that the teenagers, because Darren is talking about all this stuff about getting shanghaied. And I was thinking, like, why does he think that? Is it just because he's obsessed with pirate? Like, it seems like kind of a leap that he makes independently of anything the teenagers say. And I was just going to mention that the teenagers keep mentioning, like, their dad. Like, our dad would never believe us if we. They're saying that the reason they're abducting them is like we're going to take you back to our dad, and you can explain to him that the accident wasn't our fault, even though it was. And then Darren is like, that sounds pretty sus. I think that they're actually not just taking us to come explain things to their dad in a kind and civil way. Okay.
Yeah, which is weird because like I said, I didn't finish the book, so I don't know how things pan out, but it's like you're already abducting them. So I'm speaking as somebody who doesn't know if things shake out differently than what evidence I have to go on, but it's like, yeah, you're supernatural captors. You already abducted them. Why come up with this pretense of like, oh, well, this is our first accident, so could you talk to my dad and explain that you were the one to hit our car? Like, you've already captured them, and you're like undead. So yeah, it's kind of a strange detail. Um, Oh, yeah. The other thing I was going to comment on was when you were talking about this pact. I guess you could say that Darren the Younger and David the Elder make with the Ghost Boys is they basically sign their car away. Like the teens actually produce like this moldy contract for David to sign. They force him into signing it, and they hand over the keys and the title, and like it's a very straightforward and realistic transaction, automobile transaction. And so the idea is, yep, we own everything now. Thank you for the new car. And when they first broach this idea and things start happening, you're thinking, oh, okay, so is like the car they were in the last car that they like obtained from somebody decades ago, presumably the 50s, because we have a very sometimes they come back feel going on here with these greaser type punks, driving down poor hapless kids. So is that like the last car that they got from some unwitting victim, back in the 50s or 60s or whatever, and now just over the years through them driving it on their, supernatural midnight sprees, it's just deteriorated over time. Okay, I could go with that. That makes sense. But then they sign the Celica over to the teens. They the Celica like magically appears in the living room, or like their car morphs into the Celica. But then like not even I don't know relatively what the time span would be here, but within the next few hours or really the next 30 minutes based on the trip that they take, the Celica morphs back into the ratty old car that they had before. And they say something like, "Oh, well, it may look like this, but we really do have the Celica." So it's like, did you just buy that car's soul? Is what what is happening? I don't understand what the point of that whole transaction was. Like it would have been so much more clean cut and understandable, in a dorky, ghost story for kids way if they just got the car and then the Celica deteriorated, but it was still the Celica. But the way it's described, it's like no, it just changes back into the first car that they had. Did you get that too?
Yes, you are making an excellent point.
Thank you.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah, you talk about how they gave over like the, whatever insurance policy, the keys, the title, they give over all the documents. But then after Darren jumps out and then they pull him back in through the window, they're like freaking out. They're like, "How did you do that?" And he was like, "Do what? Open the door?" And they were like, "Yeah. Is there something you didn't give us?" Because like the car should be like 100% ghost now, and it's not because he was able to open the door and jump out. Uh, so then Darren realizes like, oh, there's still a spare set of car keys at Dad's office, but I'm not going to tell them that because that's basically our only hope for getting out of this situation is if they don't fully possess the car yet because we still have one item of it in our possession that hasn't been given over. And then so he's like, I hope David is as smart as I am. And then David immediately is just like, it's at Dad's office. It's spare keys. And
Idiot.
I was like, I know. I was like, oh, I hate you, Dave. You're not worth saving. So then there's just a sequence where they drive over to Darren and David Donaldson's father, whose name presumably is I don't know, Donald Donaldson,
Dobby Donaldson.
Dobby Donaldson. They go over to his office building, and then again, talking about not knowing where things are geographically, but it may have just been because I was skimming. There's like a weird part where they're like, the teenagers are like, they tell them it's up on the, I don't know, 13th floor or whatever. And they're like, all right, we're just going to drive in. And then they like drive up a staircase, but then suddenly they're driving up the wall of the outside of the building. I didn't really know. I guess maybe they just drove up the staircase like
I I
like
don't
the
recall
Die
them.
Hard staircase where the
I don't recall them saying anything about a staircase. The way it read to me was that um, Silas, the driver, is speeding up as they're getting nearer to the building, the office building, and Darren, the younger, comments that, oh, we drove through the hedges, at the edge of the parking lot or whatever, but we drove through them, and by that I mean we didn't do it in a ghostly way. We didn't just pass right through them like the car did back at the house. We like left a mark and left a huge gaping hole in the hedges. So yeah, it's like the car is shifting between ghost car and real car, ghost car and real car, like a flickering light bulb. Uh, and then, yeah, Silas speeds up, and there's that great moment where, like, the other teens in the car are like, Silas, no, don't do it. Like, I think one of them is maybe Jacob is like, oh no, don't. And Squeeb is like, yeah, go for it. And Silas speeds
sounds
up,
just like
and
Squeeb.
the car just straight ass goes from driving parallel along the road to driving up the side of the building. And that was one of those moments, dear listener. Um, I've had this occur before in like movies. I can't remember it happening in a book, but for comparison, there are times, there are moments that happen in like movies where things just kind of come together in a cool but also dumb way that you kind of hope that they do. And when it does happen, it's like, this is cool, but it's also really dumb, but I'm loving it anyway. Like, I think I had a very similar reaction, and I can't remember if I mentioned this on the show. It's kind of inconsequential, but just for comparison's sake, in the movie Demons, 1985, the Italian movie Demons, just the moment that the hero puts his, in the words of friends, puts his two hands together, uh, when he comes riding down the movie theater aisle on the motorcycle, swinging the samurai sword that you saw earlier in the movie, as like a Chekhov's gun kind of thing. It's like that moment where it's like, yes, that is the thing that I was dreaming of. That was the thing I was kind of hoping for, and you did it. So thank you, movie, or thank you, story. That was kind of what this moment was for me. Like, yes, they are driving up the side of the building. All is right with the world. And by that, I mean, this is dumb, but I'm loving it anyway.
Much like the meal I purchased at McDonald's. Bum. I'm loving it.
I'm loving it.
I was flipping through the book to try and find that part, and you're right. There's a mention of a staircase, but I guess they don't. In my head, they like were driving up the staircase, and like an '80s action movie or something, and that didn't happen.
That's what happens when you skim.
Yeah, I found another segment that I wanted to read because I thought it was really funny. This is jumping back to when the evil teenagers are in the house looking over the Celica, and it's about to refer to the red-haired kid. The red-haired kid is Silas. The red-haired kid went over to the car. Oh, sorry. The red-haired kid went over the car from top to bottom, from side to side and inside out. At last, he returned to his comrades. Well, what do you guys think, Jacob? I like it, Silas. It gets good mileage, and has the trim aerodynamics of today's well-made Japanese import, Jacob said thoughtfully. How about you, Squeeb? He asked the skull-faced kid. Though it's a family car, it still retains the tight control and road-hugging action of its sports model counterparts, Squeeb said, tightening his grip. His breath smelled like rotted fish. The luxury of a family sports car, the luxury of a family car with the precision of the leading sports model. I like it too. Congratulations, Dave. You are one heck of a salesman. I thought that was
Yeah.
fun. That little phony car commercial lingo coming out of these ghost kids that we're about to find out are not of this era.
Yes, exactly. So
Uh,
speaking of,
sure.
just to return to the office building moment briefly, I feel like this was one of the moments you were referring to when you alluded to, oh, these kind of quote unquote thrilling things that happen that are just used as filler because, hey, this is a scary book for kids. We should have something exciting happen. I feel like you were probably referring to this moment where so they drive up the side of the office building to the 13th floor and stop just outside the windows to the 13th floor. Um, there, I actually thought it was cool. I mean, yeah, it probably is just straight filler. There's, especially based on what happens later in the book, which I'm not too privy to. There's probably really no reason for any of this episode to occur, but I did really enjoy it because, again, it was like that classically suspenseful scenario where, oh, we're just hanging on by a thread here, and the car's going from ghost car to real car. So the fact that we just have a little bit of supernatural juice left in the tank is the only thing that's keeping us up here on the 13th floor. And then, like, the car realizes, oh, maybe I'm a real car, and it starts to drop down the side of the office building, and everybody's screaming and losing their shit. um, I really like that. As unnecessary and pointless as it might have been, I thought it was a lot of fun. That moment in particular seemed like something kind of like what I said before. It's like, yes, that's kind of what I was hoping for, as dumb as it is. Like we said about some of the moments from the Fry Time stories, it's like, well, if I was a 12-year-old boy writing a story about a ghost car, I would probably include a scene very much like this. It drove up the side of the building, and especially the detail where, hey, how are we supposed to get into the office building? And one of the ghost kids just reaches over and presses down on the horn, and all of the windows on the 13th floor just blow out in a shower of glass. It's like, yep, totally would have written that in a story that I created at that time.
Yeah, that's something you have to do that anytime you have a story about ghosts or a story about a tormented young girl with psychic powers. There always has to be a moment where all the windows just like blow outward.
Yeah, especially like when they scream when they reach their emotional and psychic peak. Ah, whoosh.
You probably said this already, but like David jumps back into the car with the spare keys, thus restoring it to its ghostly supernatural powers. And then they drive to the ocean, and this is where it says that like the nearest ocean is 8 hours away, but somehow we were there already, or whatever. Had you stopped reading by this point?
No, I got to the point where, again, in true, I'm a 12-year-old boy writing a story about a ghost car that's now going to be a story about pirates. I stopped right at the end of like chapter 16, I think it was, where the
Mm-hmm.
car is driving out into the middle of the damn ocean and they see what they see on the horizon. Would you like to reveal to us what it is?
Yeah. Well, David keeps the visuals. Like there are so many visuals that make me think of like videos of like glitches in or cheat codes in Grand Theft Auto or something, like cars driving up buildings, cars
Yeah.
driving over water, cars flying, you know. But David keeps getting these little snatches of like old timey, not poetry, but just weird little like, and he doesn't seem to know where they're coming from, but it seems like they're maybe coming from like the mind or aura of these teenagers. The first weird thought that he had, that David has, sorry, Darren has, is a grimmer too there has never been, nor shall be again. um he is the ever living portrait of a doomed man, 10 heads tall, as thin and gaunt as a hickory candle. To look upon his face is to look upon a living skull, with eyes so pitch dark as to mirror the murkiest Nantucket night. And then it comes out the story that I think the teenagers start transforming into old timey clothing. Maybe again, I have such a bad memory for details. And then these things that David is thinking, it's revealed that like Silas, I guess, just starts monologuing them or whatever, basically telling him like, "Hey, we were cursed. There was this captain who was really, um, maniacal about reaching his goal and living his dream, and all the crew was like, we don't like this guy. He doesn't seem to care about our lives much. So they cursed him to wander the waters forever. But then, we kind of got stuck there too because we were still on the ship." And it's revealed that the ship that they're going out to meet Silas, Jacob, and Squeeb's father is the captain of is the Flying Dutchman.
Didn't see that coming.
Yeah, how do you feel about this reveal? Because when I got to this point, I was like, I don't know how I feel about it. Because, a mid story total reveal like that is like when you're promised a car that's about, I mean, when you're promised a book that's about like a phantom car and then it turns into a pirate story, it's a little bit like, this isn't what I signed up for. Um, but also, I thought the pirate stuff was kind of fun. So I guess I'm middle of the road on this choice. What did you think?
Haha, middle of the road. Um, I would say the same. Like I said, I stopped right at the end of the chapter where, and for whatever you think of the reveal, the idea of like, oh, we're going from like ghostly greaser punks, tearing down the highway story to crusty sailors and pirate lore. It's like whatever you think about the reveal, I do think Angle and Barnes and or just Angle, he sold the moment pretty well, despite the fact that yeah, we have like a GTA cheat code car driving across the water to kind of soften the impact. Maybe I did think it was really cool and effective how they look out to the horizon and there's the black mass of the Flying Dutchman set against the scarlet sky, and they see the skeletal captain at the mast. And when Darren the Younger turns to Silas and he's looking gaunter and more piratey, he just looks back at Darren and he says, "Dad." I thought that was good. I'm like, all right, I'll buy that. I'll buy that. I will tell you though, we've said this before on the show. As a kid, probably would have absolutely hated that.
Mm-hmm.
Although, here's the thing. I feel like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I wouldn't have hated that. It would have definitely jarred me a lot more than it does as an adult, so that I might not have continued. But comparatively speaking, I would say true now as it would have been back then in the past had I ever read this as a kid. Overall, I probably would have preferred the piratey stuff to like Greaser Ghost Punks anyway, so it might have been a nice reveal. Like, well, I kind of like this stuff better anyway, so yay.
Yeah. So you're a pirate guy then? Because I'm not. I've never really been huge
Well,
on that kind of stuff.
I won't say that I'm a pirate guy. It wasn't like a phase that I went through. I never dressed up as one as a kid. I don't think we ever really played it. I always found it, fairly interesting. The whole sunken treasure or the hidden buried treasure bit and all of that. But I feel like I always uh, not necessarily gravitated, but there was a part of me that did always enjoy piratey illusions and like ghost stories or scary stories. Um, just because I don't know, maybe that added element of danger. Like these were already like not nice people to begin with, and now they're roaming around as ghosts, covered in kelp. There's a story from a book I've mentioned before on the show, Ask the Bones, a collection of scary folklore from around the world, and I reread one of the stories not too long ago, and it was like a, buried treasure ghost pirate story, and it has this really great image both in illustration and within the text of the ghost captain has these two turtles that are clamped to his earlobes just hanging off the side of his face. So it's like, yeah, I've always liked stuff like that, and the dripping cutlass and things like that. I've always my heart's always kindled at those kinds of images.
All right. Well, it's too bad you had to check out of this book right at the only point that
Yeah,
would have been interesting to
jeez,
you.
terrible. So yes, please, Eric, fill me in. You're my only hope. What happens to our heroes after this point in the story?
Well, I'll tell you. I don't feel the need to get too detailed about it, but
Perfect.
uh, Darren freaks out because he sees that they're leaving shore. So he impulsively jumps and tries to grab the wheel from the captain. And then um, comic beat cuts to them in the brig, Darren and David. Uh, and then they're arguing. And somehow they make some weird connection about how this ship is identical to the one that Darren was building at the beginning of the book.
Oh my
Um,
god.
and it's like the first ship that Darren built without David, because the aforementioned David is mature and likes girls now or whatever. Um, and he's like, if you had built the ship with me, David, then we probably would know how to sneak out of this brig or something, because there would
This
be
whole
some.
thing never would have happened if you had just built the ship with me.
Essentially, yeah. And then David, who's been a jerk the whole book, finally is like, "I'm sorry that I've been the Grump King. I'll build the next ship with you. We got to work together." And then some old guy comes in and is like, basically, oh, it's slop time. Some old guy comes in and is giving them food, and then David grabs him and bangs his head against the bars, thinking that like maybe he's got a key and we can free ourselves. And then like after faking dead for a couple of minutes, the old man is like, "Oh he, you can't hurt a dead man." um, and does a little jig or whatever. But then for some reason they say something about like, "Okay, well, how do we get out of there then?" And the old man is like, um, he tells them like, make a wager against those three teenagers and stick together. Let's see, what does he say? I can't find it, but he says something along the lines of like, they won't play fair, but if you stick together, you maybe could win. And I don't know why the old man is telling them this, because he doesn't particularly seem to care about them. But they're like, you'll play. Oh, he says, a contest of courage is what they'll be looking for. Dare a game of chicken. You'll play by their own special rules, unfair and even. Bear in mind, you'll always turn the odds to your favor when you count on each other, the home field advantage. Be yours. The old man laughed until he vanished completely. So yeah, so then they
That was like five
are
motivational posters strung together.
okay. So I think it cuts to like days later or whatever. They're doing the Moby Dick like scrubbing the bridge or whatever. Um, and then Darren calls for a pee break, and then the guy with the whip is basically just like, yeah, okay. So Darren goes and finds the three teenagers. They're playing with dice. So Darren's like, "Oh, you guys like betting, do ya? What if we challenge you um, to a game? And if we win, if you win, you can. Let's see, what does he offer them? Like, if we win, we get our freedom. If you guys win, there's another funny moment where um, okay, so David is the one. Sorry, I'm looking at the book as I say this because I'm so bad with remembering details. Um, David is the one challenging them to the game, and Darren is just standing there the whole time, being like, "Don't say anything stupid, David." So they're like, "Okay, if you win, you get your freedom. What about if we win?" These are the three teenagers. David began to speak. "If we lose, we will remain aboard this ship forever. Slaves, worse than slaves, sapped of our will and forced to serve our master's bidding. The chains on our broken hearts will be as big as those on the anchor, and will rattle in our souls and the souls of those we leave behind. Those unfortunate sailors who witness our passing on the bow of this phantom ship will be forever haunted by our grim, staring figures. They will recall our faces each night in their restless sleep. Our eyes will stare at them through a cloudy haze, limp in their dark sockets. Sadness without equal, regret without end, anguish as deep as the ocean. They will remember our faces forever, and never without a shudder. That's what I bet for my brother and me. Whoa, whoa, cried the crew. Thanks a lot, Dave. Good job, I said. Nah, no, no. You're going to do that anyway. What will you bet? Squeeb asked again.
Nice.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny.
So I have to ask, are our three friends Squeeb, Jacob, and Silas like piratey teenagers at this point, or have they like morphed into gnarled old men sailors?
Oh, I don't remember. I think they're
Okay,
still
cool.
teenagers.
Oh, okay. All right.
They're still
Just making
teenagers.
sure.
I don't know if they're dressed in like frilly pirate shirts or what.
So what is it that they perform to carry out this wager? The old man said it was a game of chicken.
Yeah.
How does that
So
work?
anyway, what they bet is Silas suggests like you have to gut all the fish if you lose from now until the end of time, and then there's a big paragraph about like how terrible it would be to be gutting fish all day. And then yeah, they say a game of chicken, um, which the old man already said, but then it's already acted. It's like Darren or David or whoever comes up with it is like, I've got it, chicken. And they're like, whoa, great idea, even though we already heard about that. And then David says something about like, or no, Darren says, I stink at chicken fighting. And David says, I don't think he meant chicken fighting like we know it, Darren. It's really weird because I don't know what they mean when they say, we challenge you to chicken. Because chicken, as I understand it, is two cars driving at each other. And then whoever pulls off first is a loser, right?
I can't chicken fight them. Their dance moves are just too good.
Or there was also the game where I think you would play like in a pool where
Right.
somebody would be on your shoulders.
I can't
But
remember if we called that chicken or not. I felt like it was something else. Some other colloquialism.
chicken
Just
scratch?
chicken? No,
No, I
no,
don't
no,
look.
like
I don't remember.
something totally non-chicken. It might have been though, and I'm just not remembering. But yeah, I feel like that game had some other name we called it by. But anyway, yeah. So this is like what we eventually find out is like chicken in the typical sense of we're gonna come at each other really fast, and whoever flinches at the last second loses. Is that the idea?
That's what I thought, but they don't really explain it.
Oh,
They
okay.
just say we challenge you to chicken. The teenagers are like, "All right, let's go tell dad." And then they go tell dad, and then
Dad, we
the
want to
dark
play chicken with the new slaves.
the captain nods in an eerie fashion. So then they drive back out onto land, and then basically there's a really long and confusing sequence where the rules are never explained. But basically, like they hold on to Darren the younger for insurance in the car, and they're out in like it's Potter's Field. So I was like, why does that sound familiar? Because there's a million Potter's Fields probably. Uh,
Correct.
yeah. So the idea is that again, I don't remember if the rules are set at all. Like, basically, just the three teenagers and Darren are in the car, and then David's running around in the field, and they're trying to run him down. And Darren is trying to figure out how do I save my brother, and then David jumps into like a rusted out old Volkswagen that's like half embedded in the ground, and then they hit it and it completely disintegrates because it's so old and rusted. And they're like, oh no, David's dead. But then, like David like comes up out of the ground like, hee, I'm still alive. Because I guess he jumped out the window at the last second or something like that. And then again, it's not really explained, but Darren is like, okay, if David can get to the end of this bridge without the teenagers hitting him, then we win. Is that set up at all? Not really. They just kind of decide that in the moment. So David is running across the bridge. Darren is trying to figure out, like, how do I save my brother? And then he's like, wait a second. If I, bringing it back to what we learned earlier about they need everything for the car to work for them. He's like, I see what is it? The insurance pay. He just refers to it as the document. Again, I don't even remember what it is, but he's rolling around in the back seat. Oh, and then the car turns into a big truck, like you see on the cover here. So they're chasing down David in this
Uh,
giant truck, and um, Darren is like rolling around in the back uh, with all these like garbage and paper underneath him, and then he finds the document that they signed over to the guys, and he's like, "Okay, if I can get this document to um, David, David Donaldson, Darren Donaldson's brother, if I can get this document to him, then they won't be able to run him over anymore or something." So anyway,
hmm.
the big truck is barreling down on David, and then Darren makes a paper airplane out of the document and like leans out the window and throws it out, and then David like jumps up and he caught it, yeah, and then somehow that causes the teenagers to like spin out of control, and they go over the side of the bridge, and then um, Darren basically just like because the car is like no longer solid, I guess. Again, the rules are sort of like it wasn't. I thought it was not solid. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, Darren just kind of gets squirted out the end of it as the car disappears into the ground, and then he's like, "All right, we're safe," and we won. Oh, and then there's like 2 pages left. I wanted to. There's like a kind of a funny punchline at the end. Let me see if I can find it.
While you're looking for that, I just had this image in my mind when you said he was rooting around for that document. I thought it would have been funny if like the big like aha moment was I need to get this to a notary stat. That's how we're going to defeat these ghosts. Like we need to go ahead with some legal proceedings.
We need a wax stamp.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, anyway, they win. The teenagers come by, and I think the truck is transformed back into the car. And they're all like surly teenagers. They're just like, yeah, you won, whatever. Take your stuff. They like give them all the keys and the insurance and the title back. And oh wait, maybe they're not driving. Maybe they're walking. Whatever. It doesn't really matter. Um, David leaned. Okay. Oh, they give the car back. Okay, sorry. The car transforms back into the Celica. So then David and Darren get back in it. Anyway, David leaned past me, asking, "You guys need a drop off somewhere?" Silas replied, "Nah, we got a ride." I noticed a black Cadillac pulling up beside us, the windows tinted black, a license plate with the letters FLYDTCHM. That's about as close as you can get to Flying Dutchman on a license plate, I guess. David, oh, sorry. David, David, I'm not sure how to, there's no, I don't know, how do I read this line? David, I think he's alarmed. He shrugged. Silas, Jacob, and Squeeb marched over to the Cadillac and climbed inside, not saying a word. Silas sat up front, sulking in his seat, pouting like a grump king. The power window rolled down with a pneumatic sigh, and we saw the old man from the boat behind the wheel. He still had one eye in that patch and the ugly striped shirt. He looked to the 3 sulking bullies in his car. Wave goodbye, boys, he said to his grumpy passengers. They didn't look up. The old man pulled on a familiar captain's hat and smiled. Don't mind them. They hate to be seen in public with their old man. Know what I mean? I'll wave for them. He waved and laughed as he drove off. His laughter remained as we watched the car move down the bridge and vanish with the red glow. Oh man, Darren, look at that, David explained, pointing at Potter's Field. We both had to get out of the car to watch. We watched together, though it only lasted an instant. Italics. It's been said that on the night of November 7th, 1995, a phantom ship, the Flying Dutchman herself, sailed the grassy seas of Potter's Field. Anyway, that ending would have been more impactful if I'd remembered to say that at the beginning, when they're driving past the McDonald's to get to the video store, Darren and David both are like, "Oh no, people in the McDonald's, every like duck," and they both duck down. And Dad's like, "Oh, you don't want to be seen having your dad drive you around?" And they're like, "No, of course not. You're embarrassing, Dad." So I thought that was a funny little bookend with these three evil ghosts at the end.
That is good. And again, not to like beat a dead horse or, you know, at the risk of repeating ourselves, I can't recall if, for as silly as this book was, I can't recall if a Goosebumps book ever had that same kind of tying of the bow at the end, especially with the detail that was so minor. Because you had goofy parents galore in
Boy,
Goosebumps
did
books,
you.
but yeah, I feel like nothing like that ever happened, unless it was something lame like, oh, somebody pulled a prank or a joke, kind of like at the end of Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. That's like, oh boy, hope we never go through that again, ha ha. But for it to like be something else, so for it to be two separate parties, two separate incidents where one is commenting on the other and calling back to it in kind of a clever way, I feel like that never happened in those books. So I feel like we can put a tally on the side of the chalkboard marked strange matter in that regard.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to what I enjoyed about this book. I thought it felt pretty authentic in in that sense, like in the sense that it was like this really does feel like that's how teenagers relate to each other. That's how they relate to their parents. And then the little thematic tie at the end is like, and it has been ever thus. Ha ha ha. Whether your
Exactly.
dad's just a dorky Ebenezer Scrooge hat guy or the captain of the Flying Dutchman.
Ever the same.
Yeah, so that's the
Well,
book.
that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, like you said, seems like for the most part, as you said, I didn't really miss anything really noteworthy at all, except for that cute stinger and the fulfillment of the promise offered by the cover of the book, where we actually get, however brief, albeit brief,
Mhm.
some semi high octane action.
Yeah, and they probably would have won if they just stayed in the original car. Because I imagine they must have dropped like
Yeah,
20 miles an hour when they switched to the big dual rig. Um, but I would say uh, preserve this one in the time capsule. Hey, remember how we used to do that?
yeah. Hey, we're bringing it back, just like the Flying Dutchman is bringing us back to that incident earlier in the story. So, would you say that you'd be interested in further investigations into strange matter in the future?
Even if I wasn't interested, I would still probably want to come back to it just on account of how there's 37 books in it or whatever.
So many of them.
Yeah, but
But
yeah,
so
it
I know
makes
we
me
usually do this kind of, yeah. Go ahead.
happy that I like this one enough that when we inevitably
Hmm.
do get back to it at some point in the future, I'll probably enjoy it. I feel like.
Yeah, we won't totally dread it. Um, which I know we usually do this kind of thing at the top of the show, and I think I mentioned, oh yeah, we should take a quick preview of some of those titles. But just as like a little teaser, would you want to rattle off some of the names, some of the more interesting entries in the series that
Oh,
hop out at you that maybe will act as a teaser of just what we might cover in the future?
well, I sure would. Let me look at my Goodreads where I'm one book ahead of schedule on my 2024 reading challenge. Not to
Woot
brag.
woot.
It doesn't really count because half the books I've read are these like children's books. Um,
It counts. They're still books.
it feels like that should really just be like like a half of a point. Okay, I'm pulling up the
Getting into
Strange
like,
Matter titles. Let's see. What are some interesting titles? Book 7, Fly the Unfriendly Skies. Book 10, Nightmare. But It's not the kind of night you're thinking unless you're thinking it's the nightmare. Book 13, Toy Trouble. Ooh, book 16, The Weird, Weird West. That could potentially be fun. 17, Tune into Terror. Book 18, The
So,
Fairfield Triangle.
hmm, intriguing.
Lots of boring ones. Book 30, Escape from Planet Earth. Speaking of Twilight Zone. Yeah, that's all I got. Be excited for those half audible titles,
Ooh.
everybody.
I did come across one when I was poking around Goodreads earlier. I'm sure, you just cast it off as like, oh, boring title, but I don't know, maybe paired with a cover image, I'm like, hey, that's pretty good. I don't know what number it was, but it was called Splitting Image, and it has like two faces, kind of like one's like a reptilian face, and the other's a human face with the anamorphy uh, ripples in between them, like, we're changing and dividing. I'm like, that's a good pun that I don't think I've yet heard in the annals of spooky kid books. So good
Hmm.
on you, Messieurs Engel and Barnes.
Is that not what the Tales from the Crypt one story is called with Joe Pesci?
Split personality,
Oh, well,
and I know that
yeah, I
because I'm a
guess
loser.
splitting image is better. Originally I heard that expression was supposed to be spit and image, not spitting image.
So you spit
Etymology.
an image.
I don't remember why. Look,
Hmm, that's
people
quite
can
a.
pursue their own research. Sort of like also the original phrase was to you can't eat your cake and have it too. Um, Meaning like you can't eat your cake and then still have cake because you ate it already. Which is a dumb expression, but it's better than you can't
Yes,
have your cake and eat it too.
it's like, what else would you do with a cake? Tell me.
Yeah, I don't like either version of it. Well, look,
Yeah,
I think we can actually wrap this episode up before the hour and a
we
half mark.
can.
So
We were really tight. We were
call to
on
action.
point.
Oof, I'm gonna back away from that.
Yeah, sorry.
Uh,
Well, in any case, yeah, we're gonna wrap this puppy up. If you have read any of these other books from the Strange Matter series that Eric barely told us just before, let us know. Or is there one in particular we should seek out over the others? You can reach out to us via our email address, blackmagictreehousepod@gmail.com. Or if you're a member of this current century, you can just talk to us on Instagram, which we're trying to do a little bit more of these days. We're slowly getting the hang of it. I just figured out how notifications work, so I'm coming along. And I just want to say, as far as Instagram is concerned, if we followed you or if you followed us, I'm just so pleased uh, with what I've been seeing, because Instagram seems to be the one place thus far, social media wise, that I've seen a fair amount of people congregating, via their profiles who actually post about this stuff. Um, you know, kids' books from the 80s and 90s in general, and like the spooky stuff in particular. I feel like it's been so hard to find people talking about this stuff outside of like the big popular name brand ones like Point Horror and Goosebumps and all of that. But I've been so pleased looking through some of these folks on Instagram who we followed or who have followed us, who like post about the exact same kind of books that we talk about in these episodes. I can't, as a big dork for this stuff, I can't tell you how happy that makes me, because for the longest time, and the reason why I wanted to do this show was because it seemed like there are all these books out there. I can't be the only one who has these memories, so it's just very gratifying to see that there are other uh, weirdos out there like us. So thanks for what you do. If you've come across us, we hope you like the show. And yeah, reach out to us if you got any requests or ideas. We love to hear from you. And honestly, we have definitely entertained the idea of having guests on the show. Eric and I have alluded to how sometimes our schedules don't always work out where we can record together. So if you're interested in letting us know your thoughts about any of these books, see if we can schedule a time to record an episode with you. Yeah.
Are you throwing to me?
That's all I got.
Great. Well, we've got a full 39 seconds before we hit the 90-minute mark. So,
Oh man,
do you have
how
anything you
can
want
we
to talk
fill it?
about real quick? Any micro topics
Any micro any micro
for our
topics? Do you have any
tight,
painful
strange matters?
jokes? Do you have any painful jokes to end our episode with? Any pirate jokes you got in your back pocket there that you've been waiting to
Um,
whip out?
yeah,
I feel
whip
like
out.
you gave us all of them at the top of the show. You depleted your resources.
Yeah. Oh man, now you've given me an assignment, and I was trying to wrap this up.
Oh
A
boy.
good pirate joke. Oh gosh. Um, I don't know if I can think of any outside of it was rated R. Uh, uh,
Right, exactly.
uh,
Oh, okay. Well, I got a quick dumb one
Go ahead.
that, you having said that, you'll probably see the punchline coming a mile away, just like the semi. What is a pirate's favorite chain restaurant?
I have a guess, but why don't you tell me?
What does he guess?
Is it
What you guess?
Arby's?
No, it's Long John Silver's. Idiot. Just kidding. It's Arby's,
I'm
but they
pretty
also like Long John Silver's.
sure. Yeah, that was almost an anti joke. What do I look like? A radio? Anybody get that one? Email us if you get that one. Bye.